Welcome to Overanalyzing Houseki no Kuni because you can't stop thinking about the series. Spoilers for up to 105, and please let me know in the comments if you observe anything else or analyze anything differently than I do. We're on Volume 3, and we're on the second chapter of Volume 3, Chapter 15, Hibernation. Here we go. I kind of like the contrast between the pages of last chapter and the page of this chapter, how dark it is right before the snow and how wide it is after the snow. Very cool. So here they're preparing for hibernation, ready to go. Well, that just shows, I believe this is more Goshen Euclid. Yeah. So, they're preparing for winter. There isn't much I have to say about this other than it shows all the gems together. It shows Red Barrel's admiration for the winter uniforms, or the sleepwear. It talks about this a bit in the lore book, but this is basically what Red Barrel works on for most of the year. Basically, is working on these costumes, so it's very interesting. It's just very very cute how dedicated Red Barrel is. It's interesting here that you see all these gems together, working together to create the hibernation chamber, and then as the attention shifts to Foss, Foss is the lump in the background, I guess. You get further and further away from the rest of the group and all the people. So, and again, Foss is more isolated and under the blankets. Yes, I told Cinnabar to come hibernate with the rest of us, but you can guess what the answer was. So you at least make sure that Loner gets some bedding. I find it interesting that it shows how Rutile is very not concerned, or cares about Cinnabar to a certain extent. Because from the way Cinnabar phrases their situation, it makes it sound like that people are isolating them, but it shows that their isolation is really of their own will. Because we see here that Rutile is went to ask Cinnabar to go, and it sounds like Rutile does this every year, but they still go and ask Cinnabar if they want to sleep with the other gems, and Cinnabar and Rutile also doesn't forget about Cinnabar and at least ask them for their bedding. So it shows that the gems do care about the others. And I think the fact that we hear about this from Rutile's perspective aids the fact that Cinnabar does view themselves as very lonely, which they are, but it shows that their loneliness is a bit prescribed for the fact that they are removing themselves from the society. It was their choice to do the night watch, and it was their choice to go to the cave. Of course, Meneto's Knight's comments on living next to them, and of course some gems do. Cinnabar does make some gems feel uneasy, but it shows that they wouldn't. I don't think they would have ever forced Cinnabar into that situation. It was Cinnabar's own will to become a loner and separate themselves from society. And Foss is too heavy awkward. I believe there's a translation note about this actually. Let me see. It might be some slang or something. I forgot exactly. Too heavy awkward. The original line here was Nimoki Mazu, Niomoki Mazu, which doesn't instantly make sense in Japanese either because it is I'm trying to understand myself because it is a combination of two words. Niomo means too heavy, and too big, a burden or responsibility, and could either refer to the responsibility of liaising with Cinnabar or the load of bedding Foss would be expected to carry. Kimazu means awkward, as in an awkward situation. Apparently, Phosphorite is so intimidated by the prospect that the grammar has ceased to be a priority. I can read sometimes. So I find that interesting. So what this says is the translator says it could be the state of the bedding, but I think where we left off last chapter, where Foss said that they couldn't say anything to Cinnabar, I said last chapter that was because of their guilt and viewing Cinnabar as above them now, and them not wanting to return to Cinnabar with nothing because that's something above finding a role. Foss really wants to find Cinnabar a job. That's a really big motivation for them, and they don't want to. They feel like they can't talk to Cinnabar if they haven't done that yet, And so that's why they say too heavy awkward, because they're don't want to uh I guess because they don't see it as a good thing to do. I don't know. They see it as awkward because they don't want to go see Cinnabar without, yeah, well, being empty-handed in the fact of their search. But the thing is that like I find it interesting that this again, it shows that the characters are reaching out to give Foss a role, to give Foss something to do, and Foss is kind of rejecting it, but like not actually or something. I think it just shows that Foss doesn't see the roles that they're giving to contribute to society as something useful that they want to do. Like here when they were talking about how Foss could talk to the Valerians, Foss is already gone. Foss thinks that they have nothing to contribute. So it's very interesting to see that the characters have reached out to Foss and tried to give them a role, and they aren't accepting it. And we kind of get that even before the story begins, with the fact that Foss has basically tried every role and failed. They can't stick to something, and they don't take an effort to look for small, minute things that could help the other characters, like just simply bringing Cinnabar their bedding, which Rutile is requesting. And then, Foss is just like anything but that, because uh, they just think it's too awkward and they don't think they deserve to talk to Cinnabar or something. That could be why they're all curled up in sheets, like in the distant corner, also being a loner in themselves because they don't want to do it. And that's probably why they say, they want to not do hibernation, is because they feel like they need to be separated from the gems because they feel less than them. Ew, that's creepy. Fine, I'll go by myself. Rutile says, yeah, hibernation, do I have to? And it's kind of interesting the contrast this panel brings, because they unravel Foss from inside things. But everyone else is encased in white, getting ready for winter. But Foss is, I think it just shows how Foss is kind of still stuck on what they did and their regret, with the black background and all that, because of course that's how it was previously here, before winter. I love the artistic side like that. So it's just, I'm not very sleepy this year. Another thing is that, again, it shows Foss is lonely in the paneling. I showed it last one, but you know, Rutile's here. Rutile's standing with you. Foss is alone. Foss is alone. Rutile is at least in the same frame as Foss, but this is just for comedic ad. But again, here, like, Rutile's next to Euclid. It's showing that they're together. Foss is alone. I mean, then it Foss. So my observations isn't exact, but just I'm not very sleepy. Okay, besides the gem, this shows a change in Foss, because like the information that Foss is always the one first leaving and the last to wake up. I mean, that shows that like Foss before didn't have a reason to stay up. They didn't have anything to do. They were just living out their lives. And like this shows that this change in Foss shows that they now have something that to do, but their mind is also occupied with regret and shame. And they also they don't want to they also feel like they need to be separate from other people and all that. Maybe the quack timer for my legs on right. It's just funny. The quality of light goes down. So this is the lore about the light. I find it interesting that Euclid brings up the Lunarians and how they come up during sunlight and how Antarc will take care of it. Euclid is very thinking about it from a strategic way, just like the fact that like it doesn't make sense for Foss to do it, and not it kind of like again you as more of an antagonist to Foss, kind of saying like even that Foss's will doesn't matter in the sense. Antarc, how come that gem gives fractions no fair? And so then I feel like Rutile explains a lot about all the like gems. I think that's just because Rutile probably has more like intimate knowledge about all the gems makeup because they repair all the gems. But same with Cinnabar, same with Antarc. Like Rutile goes into narration mode and talks about the gem. Usually Antarc is pure liquid, but when the temperature goes down, the liquid crystallizes. This is all such a cool the like dripping and then like Antarc forming just looks so cool. The stronger Antarc becomes. All right then. Here the shot it also shows like Cinnabar's loneliness as well. Just like how Foss was in the background of black when they talking, Cinnabar's also in the background of black. To just show the separation of like the gems sleeping in this almost pure white room, and Cinnabar and and Cinnabar being alone. But at least Cinnabar has the bedding like shown there. It shows that there is a degree of care the gems have for Cinnabar, but it's just not like enough to really, really help them with their situation, just going over the thing. And another thing is it could just be out of obligation. It could not be care. It could just be that this is something that Congo has taught them to do. Um, Here's all the gems, and then it also shows like Sensei being alone too, just with all the gems standing next to each other, and Sensei alone, which is another way that it relates to Congo, Foss, and Cinnabar. Good night. All of them are sleeping. So rest well. Sensei leaves to be alone, and my phone's battery is dying, but we don't worry about that. So another thing here is that it shows all of multiple together, multiple together, multiple together, multiple together, Foss alone. Like again, the paneling emphasizes Foss's loneliness, even though Foss never says that they're lonely. I just love the artwork so much, how much the comic artwork adds to the storytelling of it. Because like no one says that Foss is lonely until Acmea says it. Like way ahead. Like because it's like the loneliness that can still happen when you're surrounded by people. And so it's like Foss still feels lonely. Like Foss still feels ostracized from the group, even though it's never explicitly said by Foss or anyone in the story. You can feel that through the paneling of the story. It's so good. So here we have Antarc's introduction. And here we have, good morning, Sensei, Antarc, how are you feeling? Well, I'm in condition as every year. Um, it like again with Antarc like being like an only child is they don't mind being lonely because they have Congo. But another thing is that like someone was relating it to like obsession. Like Antarc has an obsession with Congo just because it's like the only person that they get to interact with all the year basically. I guess they do interact with the gems like at the end of the year and maybe at the beginning of the year, but they don't really have anyone else in their lives that they interact with often with except for Congo, which leads to their high affection towards Congo. And then Foss appears. Foss, what are you doing here? Oh, I just couldn't sleep at all. I can't stay awake. Um, it's interesting that Foss also got up and went and all that. Another thing to note is that like even when spring changes, I think Foss doesn't change their uniform. I've kind of interesting. I haven't thought too much about that detail in a while, but I do find it interesting that Foss doesn't change their winter uniform. I think it just shows that like they're caught up in the past, like they're caught up looking back and regretting decisions they've made because they don't change with the seasons as everyone else does. Like technically, if Foss is going to join winter duty, Foss should be wearing white, but they aren't. Stuff like that. Uh, very well. You may act as a team this year. I find it interesting that the speech, yay! I find it interesting that the speech bubbles kind of put like a separation between Foss there too, and like Foss is, as far as the paneling, it looks like Foss is still on the same level or going to be on the same level as Antarc, and kind of like I think it kind of is like me with words. It's like bringing Foss together with Antarc, uh, like making Antarc less lonely, like with this trio here. Like it's just kind of like bringing it together, and as Foss has been a lot more like ostracized from the gems in the previous panels, now Foss is standing next to Antarc, even just still separately. The speech bubbles sort of blocking it, but they get like closer just because they're there. But then this happens. So like, damn Foss, you were the last one to wake up every year. This is kind of like Antarc insulting Foss in a bit. They're walking together though. You're a piece of rubble, endless frittering, your time away. And this just gives context to what Foss was like before we started the story. You're a degree harder, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Like, it just shows that this is probably what Foss is thinking, and the fact that other characters think this too doesn't help with Foss's thing. But because we don't see into Foss's mind all the time, they still seem okay because they don't say anything explicitly. But we can see like through the thing that they're lonely and that they're ashamed and that they do feel guilt about it. And I bet you spent another year accomplishing nothing. Has that insecurity finally driven you to insomnia? So it seems like Antarc is kind of, like Antarc putting their shoes into Foss's shoes. That they're saying that like that's what would drive them is the fact that they don't have a role and stuff like that. Well, you see. So here's my thing: is that like it's interesting that Foss and Antarc are working together here, and it's not until Foss introduces their new legs that there is this that the separation returns. Because Foss is standing with the gems and stuff like that, but it isn't until they introduce like what has changed them, supposedly making them stronger and better, how it distances itself from the gems, and that's a constant thing throughout the story. Is like as Foss changes more and more, they get more distant from their community and from their gems, and this kind of just visually shows that here, just with them standing together talking about like how Foss used to be, and then this emphasis on their legs and the legs that are changing, and how Foss zooms by and becomes so much more distant from Antarc. Those are odd legs. Are they agate? Have you been in battle? Yeah, but see again, they're distant, and it's all because of the legs. The legs actively bring distance to the gems. And see here, like this wide shot. Like again, they were standing just right next to each other, and of course that's just how the scene is laid out. But it can mean thematically of like just how it distances it. You know, when they needed me, my legs. When they needed my legs the most, I was scared to run. And you were scolded? Like, very sad. But, like, nope. Foolish. This is why I hate acting in a group. No one yelled at me, and I hate that they didn't yell at me. That's why I can't sleep. Again, the separation, like, now, even though Antarc is helping, they're a lot more separate in the frame. It shows that, like, bosses, they were always kind of separated from the gems in the first place, but it shows that, like, the more distance has been gained with gaining new legs. And of course this is only the first development, but you know, and again like this is Foss explicitly saying that like they hate that they didn't get called out for it. They believe that they should be punished and they weren't, and that gives them anxiety. uh like when you believe that you're going to get punished for something and they don't, and this actually happens multiple times in the series, like with Congo not getting mad, is that they expect a reaction of them getting mad. They expect a retaliation. When that doesn't happen, they feel uneasy because it's not what they expected. And again, that goes back to expectations. And it gives a feeling of uneasiness and just even though it's like compassion or something that they didn't, it makes you feel unsafe because people aren't reacting the way you thought you were, you know? Like, because you're a lot more comfortable with something the more you know about them. Like the more you can understand something, the more you're comfortable. When you act in a certain way and then people don't react as the way that you thought, it gives you anxiety. It even if it's a positive thing, like they didn't scold Foss, you would think that would be a positive thing, that they're being compassionate, taking responsibility for themselves and not on Foss, and not blaming Foss for the things. That sounds good on the surface, but it concerns Foss because they don't understand why they did that. Foss is realizing that they aren't acting the way they want, and Foss thinks that they're not acting the way that they should. Uh, then they told me it's tough just to be awake in winter, so I thought maybe I could push myself a little bit in that case. So with the concept of like Foss harming themselves a bit, like this could also be seen as that as well, just with them really pushing themselves, not caring about the physical limitations of their body, and also having again that like self-hatred of their body, with the fact that they are pushing themselves to do something that is unadvisable. They are purposely putting themselves in a more dangerous situation in the hopes of growth, in the hopes of change, because they hate the way they are now. Um, I do have a job I could share with you, really. And again, Foss is excited to try a new job, but I feel like their expectations are never met every time they have a new job, and they're never satisfied, and they're never content with the work that's given to them and offered to them, like in other cases. And like that's the series. Like Foss learns to be more content, even content not having a role, you know, and stuff like that. It won't be easy, but I'll do it. But again, like the separation with the paneling. See, now it's Antarc in one frame, Foss in one frame, and I guess it also shows that it also makes Antarc look more lonely. The fact that they become more separated by that. So yeah, next page. I love this panel so much. It's so small. The anime also made it goofy, but I love the like little trail of like Foss falling behind, and you can even see parts where like Foss has just fallen in the snow and clumped down. And it just shows like their difference of personality so well in just one panel. The fact that Foss is like lazying around and Antarc is just a straight line. It's just I love how like that just like gives you like a hint into the character, and it's just like two squiggly lines. It's great. That is so weak. I can't go on. We're only halfway there. If the sun comes out, the Lunarians will be right here to get us. It also shows like Antarc's personality of being a lot more harsh, which Foss wants. Like Foss, I think that like in this point of the story, that's a good thing for Foss because Foss wants someone. Because Antarc is like, weren't you scolded? Saying that Antarc would have scolded Foss, and I think Foss begins to like Antarc because Foss is more of the type of person that they expect from the gems, someone who's harsh, who speaks their mind. And like, Antarc even just tells Foss what if we're assuming that Foss is thinking this too, like these awful thoughts about themselves, Antarc reassuring that is actually like uh Foss actually likes that because it fits with their expectations and it fits with how they think about themselves and the reality of the world. Um, if this is, I don't care if I can't walk anymore. I don't care if you can walk or not. Not. And it also Antarc is really pushing Foss because Foss knows they have this personality where they lazy around and don't do anything, or just don't get things done. And Antarc is actively pushing Foss. Like, I don't care if you can walk or not, you're coming. We're here. Foss is all lazing around. Yeah. And so then we get the ice flows that Foss mistakes as Lunarian, which is kind of interesting that Foss mistakes the ice flows as Lunarian. Foss also, like, when they kind of like break their head, they kind of look like the ice flows, which one of my friends pointed out when they read the series. But like they mistake the ice flows for Lunarians. It's interesting that they get mistaken for Lunarian later on. Nope, Antarc shares that they're just ice flows. Apparently, when the sea freezes, if the microflora from the seafloor are in the ice, it hardens in those patterns. But one time, since I said they were sinners, for some reason I've never forgotten that. What? Here it comes. So I guess that would be because we know that the ice flows are connected with Congo's brother now. So I guess that would be Congo's brother or Congo seeing his brother as a sinner or like in this context. And I guess that makes sense because Congo's brother did cause the fall of humanity, like the extinction of humanity. So it would make sense for him to say that. But it's interesting. I actually don't have much to say about that. I feel like I should have more to say about that, but I don't. Let me know in the comments if you have more insight into that. But how do I interpret that? I guess it's also maybe Congo talking about how these could be like the very bottom of the barrel of souls, like if in the caste system that the Lunarians created, and that could also be how he sees his brother, just because his brother did too such a grave thing as like genociding all of humanity. So I guess that counts. But it's interesting. For some reason, I've never forgotten about that. Here comes what, and then it goes to this panel. With the ice flows, and I love how Foss and Antarc are standing together, just looming, looking at the ice flows, and then the sound effect of like the creaking is great. And the way the ice is drawn, so, like the artwork is so good, like always. But yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about the ice flows in this one or the anything else. Let me know if you observed anything else for this chapter. I felt like it went pretty quick. Do you like the outfits? They're great. Yeah, what was your favorite thing? I don't know. Just, is there anything else you analyze about these chapters? Because I know when I go through these chapters that I won't get everything, and so I really like hearing the observations of others because people's like upbringing changes how you interpret things and how you see things. So that's why it's so great to get a whole bunch of other people's opinions because we all see things that others don't. So please put your opinion in the comment for if you think I'm wrong of any of my interpretations or if you think that a character is thinking something differently or something like that. Anyway, I will see you in the next chapter, which is was this 15? The next chapter is 16, Ice Flows. I'll see you in that chapter. Thank you so much for watching the rest of the video. Subscribe if you want to get notifications for the next stuff. It doesn't matter. Anyway, thank you all so much. Bye.